It's way this year. Please do. It's a nice new horseshoe court.
There you go.
You're all very colorful this morning.
Yeah.
Good, very colorful.
Okay. Good morning. I'll officially call this meeting of the Seneca County Board of Commissioners to order for Thursday, October 27th. Please join us for the pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Kirschner will lead us with the prayer.
Okay, please join me in a short prayer. Heavenly Father, we ask for your wisdom today in making decisions that are in the best interest of those we represent. We ask for your blessings on all those present and their families. We ask all this through your Son, our Lord. Amen.
Thank you. Roll call. Commissioner Stacy? Here. Commissioner Golder?
Here.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Here.
We'll have the signing of the journal, and then I'll accept the motion to approve the digital audio recording of the previous board session of Tuesday, October 25th, and the index.
I make a motion that we approve it as outlined.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Approved, thank you. Any adjustments to the printed agenda? Anything we need to add? Anything?
Nope.
Okay. Then, board, nothing else scheduled. Old business we'll begin with, and EMS is on the top of our list.
Hello.
Ken,
Yes, ma'am.
hi there.
I just came today to discuss with you what we've talked about in the past. I mean, it's old business. So I guess we need to kind of make a decision so that we can get started on scheduling and budgeting and things like that for towards the end of the month, and we need to make a decision. So I'm here to ask for that.
Want to know if we could get the advertisement around and everything, and get it prepared for January 1, kind of like we did with the museum. Get it prepared, get it ready.
This is in regards to going full-time with the Echo unit?
Yes, ma'am.
As presented before.
Well, I'll start. Have you looked at any preliminary numbers for the budget? I know that we've discussed some of those things.
Yes, with my estimates on revenue,
Okay.
but I don't have those estimates from Budget Commission yet, so I'm only,
What is your sense regarding adding, what's the number?
Between 133 and 150.
Okay, what's your sense?
well, I think it'll be in there. I think the numbers are going to be, his numbers are going to be good, and I think he's going to have some excess, so we may not have to pull complete 150 from ours. It depends what Budget Commission does with the Medicaid sales tax, but otherwise I think it looks okay.
Well, we have some high priorities as representatives of the people of the Seneca County. And my sense is that this would get better coverage to those who may need it, those that are the most vulnerable at that point in the middle of the night. And I don't know how we could justify, if we're able to do it financially, not seriously considering this and making it part of the budget. So that's my 2 cents worth.
I went through the numbers with them. At first, I didn't understand, but as I looked through them, you can justify, where you're coming from and with the added budget, and I would concur with Commissioner Kirschner. I mean, I think as public officials, as commissioners, we have no greater responsibility than to the safety and welfare of the citizens of Seneca County. And I mean, unfortunately, as budgets come, especially with the governor taking some of our money back, it's going to be a very, very difficult time this year, and everybody's got their hand out, and I understand that we have to play a competitive wage, and we're going to look at raises again and all this and all that, but I see nothing more important than the EMS. So I would have to, I support what you're doing there, Ken. It's just another step towards ultimately a full-time EMS department, and this is just another step towards that without going jumping both feet in, it's just a move towards it. So again, I support it.
What we're doing is we're supporting the local districts, the joint ambulance districts. That's what this does. This supports their endeavor, and it provides coverage and support to them 24 hours a day. We've met revenue every year. I don't see that we'll ever fall short of that, because the number of ambulance calls is not decreasing, and it hasn't, and it won't. So I appreciate that.
Just one last question, as I understand it though, the person in the backup unit, or the echo unit, or whatever we call it, those people are typically of a higher level of being able to respond to
Yes.
specific incidents than are some of the volunteers.
Right, it does increase our standard of care the minute they get on scene. We hire a higher caliber of person, and that's why we need to be attractive with the salary and
Yeah,
benefits.
I mean, this takes nothing away from those folks
No.
that volunteer, I just
No.
understand.
These are career people. These
It's
are people
somebody
who've
who's
been in.
ALS certified, is that the right
It is.
terminology?
They've been
Yeah.
paramedics for at least 5 years. Some of them have been
Yeah, jobs versus
paramedics. We've even got 2 RNs that are interested in this position, full-time. So I think that from the community service perspective, what we're getting is a bargain. So I think we now have the opportunity to do that, and I think we should make sure we seize that opportunity.
I fully support. Can we handle the actual paperwork and that stuff on Tuesday and go through? I guess, I know it's gonna make the article in the paper. There's been comments.
Well, there is
One more time, make sure, as we're thinking about this budget implication, and we still don't, I don't wanna wait.
There's no paperwork that we need to do until budget time for this. The only thing we were kind of looking today is just to get it advertised, make sure the job description's right, just like we did with the museum, to get it ready for first.
Okay.
And that's all we're asking today,
So
not.
there still has to have it in the budget, but you've got the sense of the word that's our goal.
Yeah. As long as he can move, he was asking if he could move forward with the next step.
Well, there's a few things we need to do. One is advertising. 2 is to let the folks of the part-time people who are currently working, who are interested in doing a full-time thing, they're gonna have to make notification to their employer. And some of these jobs that they're leaving would be civil service positions, and they require a longer notice than your standard 2 weeks. So those are the things those are the timelines we're up against. So I wanna make sure that today we make a decision that we can move forward with and be confident in talking to the prospective new employees as well as the public.
Yeah, I was thinking, nothing can ever be absolute,
Understood.
until it's done. And I'm not sure she's even warming up at this point, but, you've got commissioner support, I believe, and I believe unless there's a tragedy that occurs regarding budgeting, you're gonna be fine.
Okay.
Do we have any indication of what the state's gonna take back on us, the dollar figure? If legislatures come up with some other kind of funding mechanism that we're gonna get, I've heard figures thrown around about $800,000 they're gonna take away from us.
Well, it won't take effect until mid-year next year. So the effect, the rough numbers we're getting for next year would be about $350,000. But then the full year effect would be 2018, which would be about 700,000. I have not heard any official solutions to that cut from the state yet, so.
And that's the bad news, but also the trajectory of sales tax in the county is increasing.
Yeah.
So, it's the hope that we continue to get some economic development put together by the
Absolutely.
mayor and his staff, and that continues to look good for us into the future, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And this decision will increase our revenue as well.
Right. So, no.
So I guess just so I'm clear, because sometimes that can be fairly dense, I just want to make sure that this is a yes.
Well, I think except with the covenant that I said, unless there's, something will happen between now and the end of the year in budgeting, if the world falls apart.
I understand that.
But at this point, I think you've got the support of the group here.
Okay,
I would agree with it, it's a yes.
thank you, sir.
And I think it fits in the plans I've heard you share in multiple settings.
Right.
About where the direction goes for
Sure.
EMS in Seneca
Exactly.
County.
And that is still the plan. We will support the community-based EMS system involving the local governments, townships, joint ambulance districts, and the such. And this is exactly what we need to do to move forward with that agenda. So, thank you for your time, and I'll get out of your hair.
Another thing is that we got the check-in for the,
Oh, yeah. We're making good on that grant. We did receive a pay-in for over $300,000. And we've got a smaller one yet to come for the ancillary stuff, you know, radios and lights and all the stuff that we have to do after we get the trucks. So when it's all said and done, we'll have the full amount here probably before the end of November. We'll have that full amount of that grant in hand. So I appreciate you guys forwarding that to us so that we can make that purchase before the grant showed up. And now the grant's here, so that is good news.
Please, as always, express our appreciation to the volunteers and to
Absolutely.
the staff. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think this goes a long way towards doing that, because they have all been holding their breath waiting for this decision. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Justice Center update. We do have a JJC leadership team at noon today. Public safety building at the fairgrounds. Right. So other topics of discussion for purpose of today, I believe we've got joined by one of our partners as well as the city here, and wanting to hear discussions in terms of, at the last Joint Justice Center meeting, we had the, a lot of discussion about as things were tracking, as in very elementary form terminology here, but tracking towards an extra $1 million above where we were, and as we're getting to solidifying, I guess, a GMP2, how are we going to prevent that from happening, deal with that, etc. That's been the discussions we've had, and things in the summer report from our owner's rep talked about the potential things that we had outlined on that meeting on the 13th. And further discussion, so I don't know whether discussion we want anything else discussed here prior to the meeting. This would be the time to do that.
Yeah, I obviously have written an email to everyone involved, all stakeholders in the project, and we're looking for every possible way to conserve as much money as we can. First of all, I will begin by saying that I believe that our owner's representative, Quando, has done an excellent job getting us to the point of GMP1 and GMP2. As this board knows, when we signed the contract with Quando, we did it with a 30-day out. Their services are in the range of $300,000. We are approximately halfway through that. I have spoken with the construction manager at risk and the architect engineer about what would happen if we no longer had the owner's rep. They felt confident that the reports would be as they have been in the past. In fact, they said that they're writing most of those at this point. And that, in my opinion, most of the services are being duplicated at this point as it relates to weekly updates and as it relates to oversight of the project. We have chosen a form of construction manager at risk, and I think the key word there is manager. Part of their contract calls for them to handle all the billing and to supervise the project and to do whatever they need to do financially and indeed manage the project. We are very close to getting our GMP2 numbers, and I believe that we should eliminate the additional $150,000 for the owner's rep that would be due in the future, because I think that we have sufficient management on staff to handle that. One of the questions was whether or not that would affect the $3 million maximum set by the city. It absolutely would not. We made a commitment that that $3 million is the maximum the city would have to put in. That includes the furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So to make that very clear up front, we have had some discussions about deferring the FF&E, and I believe by the calculations that I have that we have sufficient monies that includes the $500,000 interest-free loan to complete this project. and we can make some decisions about alternative upgrades, if you will, to see how much of the contingency is left and how much of the loan proceeds would be left towards the end. So, my motion would be everything has to be unanimous on the JJC portion of things. So when we have a meeting today, we'll have to vote on any major changes in the structure of this deal. My motion would be then to discontinue the uses, the services of Quando, and eliminate the potential $150,000 that would be necessary to pay them into the future.
If I can add in here, I mean,
If there's a motion, if you want to second the motion, then we can discuss the motion.
I would second the motion.
The motion is second on the floor. Proceed.
Okay. I concur with Commissioner Kirchner. I think Quandale has done an excellent job to get us to the point that where we are. As I know this is unrelated, but yet it's still related. We have a lot of budget constraints. You know, besides, as commissioners, our responsibility is to maintain safety and the health of the community. It is also to be fiscally responsible. And with where we are with, you know, spending taxpayers' monies and so forth, I believe that we are to the point that Quandale has allowed us and got us to the point where they are. And I think we are duplicating services, and as our second greatest responsibility as commissioner is to be fiscally responsible. And I think this is in a way that we can help assist that goal and to be fiscally responsible, and that is why, and why that I would concur with Commissioner Kirchner and that we would do away with that service.
I wholeheartedly agree we need to be fiscally responsible, but I think in doing that, we need to maintain the services of our owner's representative. We fought long and hard, or some did early on when we started down the track to do this very unique project as a multi-governmental project, to make sure that we did so in as much as a public and transparent way as possible, with a qualified and neutral third party to serve as that owner's rep with the authority of expertise that they would bring to the table on our behalf. So losing that neutral party, the workload alone that is completed, there's some that appears to be, to many, I guess, duplication, but there's an awful lot of behind the scenes stuff that is not duplicated by anybody. That they're doing and fighting for us. We're still trying to get to the GMP too, and I'm not going to call her out and ask, but if we were to ask Ms. McLean how many times she has called Gilbane to try to make sure we're keeping us on the schedule that we need to have that information. It's those kinds of things, and we're not just phone calls, it's the review of the information, reviewing the estimates, working through those, giving us ideas. There's 3 individuals in the room from Quandale, but their resources of their whole organization behind us if and when, and we've got a lot of significant work ahead of us in the next 12 months. If it's 10 months till we're in the building or 11 months until they're in building, there's still going to be a few months of the paperwork that then shall trail until everything is, walkthroughs, everything's done and all the paperwork is complete. So I have a vast concern about that workload because I'm not sure who's going to do that. I don't know that elimination of $150,000, yes, we need to be very fiscally responsible, but we need to make sure our project is delivered according to the specs that we've paid for and that we are expecting, and that we're delivering that project and such. So how that workload, I'd like to hear your thoughts on what proposal we would do there, because I do not understand how the county we can't bring that work in here. Our full-time people are full-time. I don't know how we add 20, 25, 30% of work to their schedules.
Well, I will answer that simply by saying the reason that we chose the structure that we chose for this construction is, again, construction manager at risk. The key word again being manager. They being the chosen people of Gilbane, have taken this project on, and they have agreed as part of their contract, which is where the duplication service has been, to handle all the financial aspects including making certain that bills are paid and contractors are paid and reports are written. Construction manager at risk includes all of that. Very similar language as to what we have at Quantico. At the outset, we decided that there would be a possibility down the road that that we wouldn't be using during the entire construction period, a construction or a owner's rep. And for that reason, we put in a 30-day out clause. I think it was very wise to do that, and we did do that. There is not a 30-day out clause with the engineer, nor is there one with the construction manager at risk. There is, however, a 30-day out clause there in anticipation of duplication of services and things that would not necessarily be needed. As far as the office staff goes, I have every confidence that if there is some additional work, they can handle it. Case in point is sewer payments. When we lost our regional planning person, that, we stepped up as a staff and handled that for a period of a year. So to suggest that this office staff couldn't handle certain things, I think is absolutely wrong.
Well, they stepped up that, but there was some additional compensation, so.
Well, and I would propose that if we have our maintenance supervisor that has been on this job every day, virtually, that we ought to probably talk about some type of a stipend for him to be there. The other thing that we have to remember is that we have Gilbane on site with a number of people from an administrative standpoint every day. They have a full-time office above CASA on Court Street. They are there every day supervising this project. They are there every day having conversations with our supervisor. Basically, the information that we receive is the result of information that is delineated to Quandel from the Gilbane Group and from our architect engineer. So we would continue to receive those monthly, weekly reports. We have somebody on schedule to do all the accounting work that's necessary to get done. So the project will be relatively seamless as it relates to this transition, and it is my opinion that $150,000 would be much better spent on the potential cost of FF&E, the potential cost of landscaping that has to happen, the conversion of the annex for purposes of the new court that's going to be in there, and the other things that might happen that we would, as we know, there's been a number of things. I mean, the latest has been a $100,000 need for a generator to run the elevator, which was not in the original plan. So there are a number of things that are going to occur during the course of this that will use some or all of the contingencies. And this is a way to get the services that we need completed without adding additional cost.
I'm not sure that, again, if we how we take full-time staff in the county's payroll, and even with additional compensation, pay them more to do more full-time when they're already full-time. I guess that is, and then that is indeed an expense, and then that now is an expense that's on us.
It would be, first of all, it would be a fraction of what we're talking about, and secondly, in essence, our maintenance supervisor is there every day now anyway. It's not gonna be anything that's added to his daily duties. He is virtually on that site all the time. In fact, he's the one that was able to handle changing the sewer routing and was there to pretty much oversee that. So it's not like we're asking them to do more than they presently are doing. He's already there, and already there virtually every day.
The paperwork side of it then's gonna come into this office, and I guess,
The paperwork will be completed by Gilbane per contract.
but there's a lot of other things regarding watching the prevailing wages of them and so forth. It's like, no disrespect to any of our partners whatsoever and their expertise, but neutral party is neutral party, and, who's watching the henhouse kind of a thing. We need to make sure that that is a neutral party going through these things. They're asking the architect and the CMR of, do you mind that these people are watching over your shoulder and doing these things? Sure, it's less of a pain, maybe for them to have to worry about that stuff. And I'm not saying that they're gonna do anything of ethical demeanor that, you know, is in question. That's not the point. It's what we're trying to deliver in this very public project for our constituents. And so there's are my concerns. Separate but yet not, the FF&E, you made a statement that I guess I didn't know that we had an opinion on that yet. And I know when I spoke with the mayor and parties on Tuesday, they were gonna be checking on that, on whether the FF&E potential savings did or did not impact you, because whether it did or did not include fixtures and furniture and equipment for the second floor, which is municipal court.
Well, I mean, that would be something we have to discuss if there is some other opinion, but I believe that this commission had agreed with the city that $3 million was their maximum, and I believe that we need to stand up and continue with that, because that's what we said. So I believe that we would have, no matter what the attorney's opinions are, we are people of our word.
I've did some research on this, and the last time that the county did a major project, which was the sheriff's department, that they did not have an owner's rep in that. That they dealt, well, at the time, there wasn't a construction manager at risk, but there was construction manager.
There was a project manager for the jail.
On the
Yeah.
project, yeah, but we did not have an owner's rep.
But you didn't
on that
have two
process.
governmental entities, and it wasn't a $14 million project. I mean, there was, you know, it was just highly advised to us when we looked at the CMR process to use an owner's rep. I just remember that presentation that was, whoever did that, it was a city council meeting. I don't remember who did the presentation, or city, it was over there in the municipal court room, but
Well, this is not the final answer. I mean, we have three entities involved, the judges, the city, and ourselves. And by virtue of the structure of the JJC, all three have to agree unanimously. So, at this point, I will call the question.
call roll.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Yes.
Commissioner Zoller?
Yes.
Commissioner Stacy?
No. Motion carries. That'll be our vote, I guess, at the call of that during the Justice Center meeting at noon.
Just for clarification, it does not have to be unanimous with the commissioners. We speak as one vote. And in this case, with 2-1, so we voted against continue with Gilbane. Now,
No,
we got the other,
Not good.
I'm sorry, with Quandale, I'm sorry. And then we will go to the other, in the Justice Center meeting today, the other two legs of the stool, which will be the judges and the city. They will then have to cast their vote, and for this to continue, if we would discontinue with Quandale, they would have to agree with it. So the three legs of the stool, which is commissioner as one vote, judges as one vote, city as one vote, that has to be unanimous. We have spoken as commissioners, the three of us, while we have not all agreed, the majority was 2 against 1, so that carries our one vote. I just wanted to make sure we have clarification on that.
That'd be correct. Do we want to discuss further something that the other two parties to this, and when this vote occurs, assuming it's coming forth, is about, is the county going to take on that workload? Because I think that's a question that's going to happen, and I don't think we're in agreement on that. Because I'm not sure, I don't know that I want to put Stacy Wilson on the spot right now, but, you know, I guess I really want to think through how that could possibly happen, and I just don't understand that. I raised that flag slowly at the time we did the sewer billing. Not that we didn't need to help out, not that we didn't want to help out, but I cautioned the fact that, while short time we can do things, and this is probably 14 months with all paperwork, 16 months until paperwork's complete, but how do you put full-time people, you know, what makes them full-time now that they have time to take on just for an extra nickel or a dime or whatever it might be?
I think $150,000 is a whole lot more than a nickel or a dime.
Well, I'm getting to a space where we spent $150,000 additional on our staff, that's our pocket, not the project, but I know you're not talking $150,000. Whatever it is, that, again, takes away from what we think we're saving.
I think
Even though it's a different
Quandale
pocket.
did an excellent job to get us off the ground, and I totally support that. But I think the project, by what we have set up as a 30-day out, and that we're up and running now. We have proper people in place to govern the rest of it. I just think it's a waste of, it's that $150,000 can be better utilized. I shouldn't say a waste, but it could be better utilized elsewhere in a very tight budgeted project, what we have. We just don't have the luxury to have a lot of whistles and bells into this project and oversee it, especially in duplication of service. That's my opinion.
Well, I'm not sure we have a solid answer if that question gets asked of us of how the county will take that workload on, but we'll deal with that, I guess, at noon if that comes up. If there's anything else on the Justice Center? Okay, airport update. Next on the agenda.
I guess I have talked to Brad. Brad is gonna get a hold of the Toronto Rose and have a discussion on the trees. And I have talked to Rhonda and asked her to move forward with the paperwork for that licensing or easement or whatever she was drawing up. So she's gonna work on that, and Brad is gonna talk to the Toronto Rose, and I'll be waiting for the report from both of them.
As I said, it's much better if the two of them can work it out,
Yep.
come up with a solution, rather than us try to cram something down.
Yep. And Brad was okay with that, so I'm gonna get with that.
All right, thank you. New business. We have the law library on here. I'm not sure who added it or what the topic was beyond our issue.
Well,
We
okay,
had
if
meeting-
I.
Apparently had a meeting, right?
Yeah, I happen to set it as the Law Library Commission and as a representative of the commissioners here. And there's a thought process as we move forward with utilizing the annex. As we move into the new courthouse, and we know that juvenile court and probate court will be moving into the annex, there is some hope there that we can establish a small presence in the annex for the law library. And just to explain to everybody what the law library is that it is a resource center for all the lawyers and for the judges, I understand, to have current accessibility to the laws and so forth as they go through cases. And it's a tool that we have available through the funds come through fines that are levied at the court, and there's a percentage of that goes towards the law library. So in addition to that, as we look at utilizing the new annex, we're talking about a small space. We also have an issue that we need sufficient space for deliberation, or what's the right, conference room. So the thought process there would be if the law library could govern that space, if we could allow it to be in the new annex, where that the lawyers and defendants and so forth, instead of conferencing out in the hallway at some times that they have to, they could do that in a private conference room. So what the law library is asking for as we move forward and fully utilize the annex, that if we could allocate a portion, a small area of that for the law library, again, which has accessibility to all the attorneys that deal with the court system, and in addition, a small area to handle for conferences. The good part of it is the law library has sufficient funds to take care of all the furnishings in that location. So that would be one less expense that the county would have to pay, and they could pay, we would just have to make available some space, and they would take care of the furnishing of that space. And Dean Henry is also, you chair the.
No.
Oh, you are on the law library. If you would care to add something beyond what I just mentioned there, I certainly would appreciate your input.
I won't take long. I read this morning that this was on the agenda, and Mr. Zoller, thank you for putting it on. We just want to place hopefully in the courthouse or the annex. And I understand space in the courthouse, the new courthouse is limited. And I know that conference room space is limited too. Our role wasn't really conference room, but it sort of is a global solution to a couple of problems. Because the law library also has to be accessible to the public, and that's really why there was a change in the law a couple of years ago that turned law libraries into what's known as a Law Library Resources Board. And it was, I'm not real sure what the genesis for the statute was, but the idea was that we would make law libraries open to the public because we have an increase in people who are trying to represent themselves. Divorce cases, civil protection orders, that sort of thing. So in some counties, the law librarian is the first stop for members of the public. And this sort of takes pressure off the clerk's office because they're not allowed to answer legal questions. Neither is a law librarian, but they can provide forms, a place for people to fill forms out, books if they need them, that sort of thing. So what we're looking for is some space in the courthouse or the courthouse annex. And on top of that, we might be able to provide some assistance to the county in the form of a law librarian who could also address questions from the public, simple things like where to go, you know, what floor is the juvenile court magistrate on, for example, or where do I go for municipal court, and also provide forms and provide access to legal documents and legal resources for the public as well as for attorneys and judges. One of the things that we do right now, for example, is we're in a very small space. Judge Kelbley has been very kind to allow us use of his office in the back for the law librarian, and then there's I would call it a large closet. I think it's fair. It's been converted into would you agree with this? It's a large closet?
Sure.
Okay.
I don't have that many clothes, but maybe you do.
Right. Well, not a clothing closet, but the room's probably 6 by 10.
I suppose.
Yeah. That's where our current law library is right now. Obviously not sufficient. Public can't go back there because it's behind, it's actually part of the judge's office, so chambers are there, things of that nature. But as we move into the annex, we need a place that's accessible to the public. And the thought was that the law librarian could do some multiple duties that might actually assist the courts, like directing people to the right place, providing forms. And then in the context of this, since there is limited conference room space in the courthouse, as I've seen the drawings, where there are some conference rooms there, but not a lot of them, the thought was that if there was space in the annex, that the law librarian could not only administer the law library things that needed to be done, which doesn't require a lot of space at all. By the way, you need to know libraries are much smaller than they used to be. Most of our resources are electronic now. In the old days where we had, if you were around and remember when the entire 4th floor of the county courthouse was occupied by the law library, those days are over. We don't need that kind of space anymore. In fact, we've worked very hard as a law library board over the years to eliminate printed volumes and move things that don't get frequently used. And now we're down to a small selection of printed matter and a lot of online electronic materials. And we pay for all of that, by the way. There are no taxpayer dollars going into that, in the sense that there's no general fund monies that are used for that. The Law Library Board is self-funded, including the salary of our librarian. So this won't cost the taxpayers any money at all, and hasn't for the last couple of years. We're also thinking, though, if we could expand some conference room space, that the librarian could manage that as well. And as a practicing lawyer, I will tell you, our current courthouse annex does not have sufficient conference room space. It's frequent, very frequent. If you have a jury trial going on and there's a hearing in one of the magistrate's rooms, that you'll have people doing things out in the hallway, including discussing matters that, quite honestly, you wouldn't want discussed in public when it comes to divorce and domestic relations work, criminal work, that sort of thing. So as you make plans for wherever that is, Mr. Zoller mentioned the annex. Obviously, that would be a great place for us to be. As you're making plans, keep us in mind, and also keep in mind that we can do more for you than just manage a library. We can actually assist in furnishing that. We can assist with management of conference room space, and we could be conceivably the first stop for the public after security when they come through the door. We could take the load off of, I know the clerk's office is probably anticipating lots of questions from the public. I'm not real sure how that's all going to be laid out, but we can do some things. Our law librarian is very capable, and we have some flexibility in her schedule where we can undertake some additional duties that are related. so.
Thank you. Those of us that are old enough to remember the library and the old courthouse, remember ducking our heads trying to get into the book vault, if you will, and do title searches and those kind of things. You guys have come a long way with it. The other point I think that we have to make certain that we don't miss is that there may very well on a number of occasions be a need for council to access the library at other hours than the courthouse is open. So ideally the space would be accessible in the evening or early morning for those people that need to do research.
It's an excellent point, which is another reason why we'd really love to have some space on a first floor, or even on a ground, sub-first floor if it's available.
Sure, we have discussed the possibility of the space across the street in the RTA where the regional planning offices now are. I know that's not the ideal space, but it does allow for after-hours accessibility potentially, and it does allow for conference area.
It does.
And a separate office for just one-on-one meetings.
Yeah.
So it is a relatively large space, has bathroom facilities, et cetera. I know that's not number one, but it's a bit like changing tires on a moving car right now, because we don't know who's gonna be in what office, when and where, especially in the annex. And we do need to have a conversation with Judge Meyer about that as well, because that will be his, unquote, his space.
Yeah, and I don't want to step on any plans that are currently in place. I just thought that this, Mr. Zoller and I, Mr. Zoller's on the Law Library Resources Board, and so I'm glad you brought this up. But it's been time to discuss it. We haven't really raised the issue officially because we wanted to do things like talk to the judges and
Sure.
and ultimately talk to the commissioners as well. And we don't need anything special. I will tell you, we don't have great need. Infrastructure is not really a big issue with us. Really, we need space. But we can, the point of my discussion with you is we can provide some additional services that might be beneficial, ancillary services to the county that, for example, in Sandusky County, you have a very nice setup in the basement of the courthouse. The law library is there. And there's also conference room space for things like depositions, attorney meetings, even members of the general public can go in there and do their research, fill out their forms. And that sort of takes things away from folks being in the corridor. It's a nice thing from a standpoint of security. You don't have a whole lot of people milling around.
But I think something flows with that. At some point, we're gonna need an archival center, and that certainly would be.
We are.
It certainly would make sense to have it in a research area.
We've already obtained a grant. Jen Bowen has done a phenomenal job with this. We've obtained a grant to archive documents, and we have equipment to do that. And she's working now with our local Tiffin Seneca Public Library. It's sort of a joint venture to see about how we can maximize those opportunities. And as we start to move things from a printed format to a digital or optical format, we're going to be ready to do that. So that's one of the things that she's taken under her wing as an initiative that's turned out to be, I hope will turn out to be very beneficial. So, thank you all.
Basically, the interest is just, and we know in the coming months that we're gonna start looking at utilization of the annex. And we thought we wanted to get our request in early in the process.
As I say, programming's work to get preliminary stuff's already started with the walkthroughs with the annex and with Judge Meyer and the data center and that kind of thing. And, so thoughts to consider by all means, that we surface up the idea of the public assistance. So it's great. I'm concerned about the access, about the after-hour things because of the way the entrance is going to be with the new Justice Centers all through the new portion of the building. So I'm not sure that, said it not as attractive, but easier with the RTA maybe, but things to be looked at.
Yeah, well, as I understand, is that it could be an outside entrance door. It could be key coded that only the attorneys would have access, to that key code where they can get in at basically 24/7. Is that correct?
The example that we used is in Sandusky County, which their courthouse is complete. Well, now they're renovating their courthouse, but their courthouse is completely self-contained. Their law library's in the basement, and there's a basement access where you have a fob, you have a key and an access code. I think they've gone to a fob now, and you get that as a member of the association. You have to be approved by a judge, the administrative judge, So you're able to access that library without being able to access the rest of the courthouse. So there's, I don't know structurally or architecturally how that would be done. And I will tell you, that would be a nice thing. It is absolutely not our number one priority. The number one priority is space. And we just would like to have some space, and optimally that would be space that the public could access. Because that's really, in the old days, the law library served just judges and lawyers. That role has expanded. And we have more people who are what we call pro se litigants now, and folks that just need information. A lot of folks doing their own research, that sort of thing. And right now, their resource is not accessible to them as a member of the public.
Is the law librarian full-time, part-time?
She's part-time, and we changed that as well. Traditionally, we had a full-time law librarian, and the consensus was we didn't need a full-time law librarian, so we moved that position down to part-time. If we go into an area that is part of the courthouse, we could actually, we have the flexibility financially to expand that position to full-time with some additional duties. I wouldn't be in favor of doing that if that person were just doing exactly what she were doing now. But if we were able to expand her duties a little bit, for example, more access to, Jen doesn't have real access to the public right now. If a member of the public comes up and wants something, she's got to go outside, meet with them in the hallway, that sort of thing. We would hope that that would change. And then if we have space for conference rooms and things of that nature, she can organize that. And she can do some other tasks as well. We do have some flexibility as far as her position goes. In some counties, the law library is the first stop. You go see the law library if you want forms or directions, things like that, because of its proximity, and it sort of takes some pressure off of some of the other offices who have enough questions to answer, day to day.
And again, remember, we don't pay for that. The law library pays for that, and they generate their funds through fines from the court.
That's
So
correct.
it is a non-taxpayer, so we actually would get a free benefit. for the
It
county.
is.
I just,
It
like I
is.
said, should there be a public assistance, I was thinking it would have to be a full-time position or to that too.
Yeah, and we
With
have.
the other
we-
responsibilities, that's why I was
We
asking.
do have the flexibility to do that. We have the financial flexibility to do that. I think we've done a good job of managing our money over the years, and we've substantially cut back on buying books. Very expensive. Law books are unbelievably expensive. They're worse than healthcare. And so we've pared that back substantially. But as I said, depending on where we are and what we're doing, we can have discussions on what the law librarian's role would be.
We got a building full of law books that maybe we are able to dispose of.
Where's the healthcare? If you like your law books, you can keep your law.
I gotta tell you, I don't want those law books anymore. I think an old law book sometimes is a liability. Some of the stuff may have some historical value, and Jen is actually consulting with an individual up in Toledo who we've previously contracted with to decide what we should keep and what we should not keep. And obviously, that'll be a discussion we'll have at another time. But I do want to make it clear, we have no intention as a current law library board to move all those books back into this space. We are not looking for a massive amount of space by any stretch, and I want to make that clear to you. We can do with a very limited amount of space. The principal issue is enough room for computers and places for people to sit and work and study. Some book space. We're probably at less than 10% of book space of what we were back in the day, when just about all of the fourth floor was filled with books. I mean, there were literally tons of books on the fourth floor. We're not there anymore. We've moved away from publishing and the published stuff and more to the electronic and optical. Most of the research now that lawyers are doing is online. I would say the vast majority of it is online resources, which aren't a whole lot less expensive, but they're much easier to manage.
And I think it's worth saying, online, they have to access it to the law library. You can't, because of the online thing, you have to do it at the law library, correct?
You do, because otherwise you have to buy licenses that are very expensive. We have two sets of licenses that we pay for now, and the one that is available to the public is the patron access. That availability is through the law librarian. The public can't just go in and enter a password and start doing legal research. If we had a license like that, it would cost us much more money than what we're
And you
paying
can't
right now.
access it at home
No.
or at your office.
That's
It's gotta
correct.
be at that physical
That
location.
is correct, that's right, which is another reason why we just need some space. But we do not need the equivalent of what we had in the past. I'm not coming in here asking for another fourth floor of the courthouse like we had in the good old days. Those days are over. Thank you.
Thank you.
Nothing else on that? We'll move to bill vouchers.
And it doesn't look like I have any bill vouchers today. I have a resolution authorizing an appropriation adjustment within the general fund. This is at the request of the sheriff. He's moving some money from equipment auto, and contract services over to his other contract services and supply lines for a total moved of $19,267.97. Resolution authorizing an appropriation adjustment within the general fund. This is moving $396 from vital statistics to travel. I have a resolution amending the board's orders of October 11th, 2016, Journal 92, page 492. The resolution authorizing an advance from the general fund to the Selective Traffic Reinforcement Fund Program. The fund on the original resolution said 1195, and then the correct one is the 1095. A resolution authorizing the Seneca County Board of Commissioners to enter into an agreement contract with the Lucas County Board of Commissioners for the Lucas County Coroner to perform certain necessary autopsies and toxicologies reports for the calendar year of 2017. And I have a resolution reappointing Gerald Niedermeyer to the Tiffin Seneca Public Library Board of Trustees. Looks like he would start on January 1st, 2017 and end on December 31st, 2023.
Wow.
And that's all the resolutions I have.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion that we approve it as outlined.
Second.
I got a motion and a second. Any comments, concerns, questions on any of the resolutions as presented? Seeing none, roll call please.
Commissioner Kirschner?
Yes.
Commissioner Miller?
Yes.
Commissioner Stacy?
Yes. All approved. So bring us to an opportunity for citizens' comments. At this time, do we have anyone who has comments, questions, things they'd like to bring up? If so, for the purpose of our recording, please make sure you do state your name, because if you get close to us, they won't see you on the tape, but they'll hear you.
Different hat. I wanted to thank Mr. Kirschner and Ms. Stacy for your letter regarding the school levy. Oh, Dean Henry, 315 West Woodmere Drive in Tiffin. So
Thank you.
appreciate your support, all of your support, but I read the two letters this morning, and I particularly want to thank you for taking the time to write those up and get them in.
Anything else for citizens' comments? Yes, Mayor Motts.
Yes, Aaron Mons, 50 Meadow Lane, Tiffin, Ohio. Don't want to beat the dead horse, but just want to get the clarification. What, if any, expenses do you foresee the city having to pay beyond $3 million for the Justice Center? Are there any expenses that you foresee us having to pay beyond the $3 million? I guess this helps us, obviously, with a very important decision that we're about to make this afternoon.
Mayor, I don't see any additional expenses, except that when we get to the end, if you have a desire to participate in some landscaping or some, you know, some work at the end that is
Optional.
optional. Yeah, I guess that's the word I'm searching for, so.
Okay.
Another thing I would look is, and we certainly are gonna furnish the courthouse with very nice, this is gonna be long-term kind of things, but there are always options, you know, good, better, best type thing. We may do a best and you may want a better, you know, kind of thing. So I would envision possibly things of that nature, but.
But that would be, I mean, that would be a function of the judge.
Sure.
If he has some funds available that he would like to upgrade, again, you know, this is the table that we're gonna put in there. If you want something with, you know, solid wood instead of laminate, you may need to pay for that.
Yeah,
But,
so upgrades essentially.
you know, but again, as I stated earlier, we had to commit to $3 million as the
Mhm.
maximum, that's where we missed that.
Yep.
Okay, so
Excuse
this goes
me.
against our agreement.
Pardon?
What our agreement says, the three attorneys, I think, discussed this yesterday, that basically the furniture that office uses day to day, their chairs, their desks, their printers, their computers, that stuff was to be supplied by each individual. So that would be the expense of the cities from what the cooperative agreement said.
I think that the FF&E is, it takes into a whole lot more account than just chairs and those kinds of things.
Sure.
I assume that much of the stuff that the judge and municipal court judge is going to use will be transferred from his current building if there was a conference table and those kind of things. So again, my opinion is that we said the city would have the $3 million maximum. If there are some ancillary things that they want to add that are not part of the structure of the deal, then those would be added, but they would just be on a case-by-case basis, I guess.
And that's when we talked about the FF&E at the meeting on the 13th, things at a whole different scale, but we're looking at things for the Board of Elections. And knowing that, projected cost, it doesn't have the inventory of how many chairs, filing cabinets, or whatever is coming with to the new facility. So if it's talking about furnishing this facilities for X number of staff people, X number of judges, I'm sure it might be a little on the high side, so that is probably going to be tweaked down, but that's one factor of it, and then however the cooperative agreement is.
And I want to make it very clear that one thing does not have anything to do with the other thing. In other words, if there is an issue or a conversation to be had about FF&E, it wouldn't matter whether we change some of the structures that we're talking about of this, of the way things are being billed and being handled now. That whether we use an owner's rep or don't use an owner's rep has nothing to do with the discussion about the FF&E.
Other than the FF&E was one of the cost-saving ways you were looking at.
Yeah, it is one of the cost savings ways we're looking at, but the specific issue regarding whether we continue with an owner's rep or don't continue with an owner's rep does not tie in any way to the FF&E discussion.
Totally separate.
Other than the city, I think, was trying to clarify, if there was those expenses, then they're going to say, we thought we were covered with that. If you're pulling that out, we've got to cover those expenses. I think that's why you wanted the clarification.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, what we wanted, commissioners, is if we are capped at 3 million, we don't feel like we really have much to say about what happens with the owner's rep. That is going to be additional cost to the project that you all may have to incur if issues arise. Our concern is if there really isn't a $3 million cap and there are FF&E overruns in the end, and all of a sudden someone comes back to us needing more money because maybe an owner's rep or someone would have caught those overruns. If we're capped at 3 million, this decision to terminate the owner's rep is on you, and we're going to vote however the commissioners want us to vote. If the cap is not 3 million and there could be $100,000 worth of additional FF&E requests due to the fact that something wasn't caught up front, etc., we want to make sure that we're not getting stuck with a portion of a bill later on that might have been caught up front. If we're capped at 3 million, this is strictly your decision to make because you're the ones that are assuming all the risks. So I kind of do see them to a degree being tied together. If we have no risk in it, you make the decision with the owner's rep, we're not going to stand in the way. So, yeah.
Yes, Holly.
Holly McLean, Franklin County, Ohio. I would just respectfully request during our next meeting, at the 12 o'clock meeting, that if we do discuss our contract at that portion, I would respectfully request we put it at immediately following that meeting. I would like to keep things business as usual. We can discuss the FF&E, we can discuss the budget issues and things like that, but to keep the focus on the project itself, I'd like to keep things moving that way. Thanks.
Anything else? Seeing none? Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Any second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
We stand adjourned 10:59.